Cool. So this is our last one. This is what's doing my head in at the moment. Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. My mother-in-law's a masseuse and I got cupping bruises all over me. If you're new here, my name's Ash, I'm 27, I'm a cybersecurity enthusiast, and on this channel we go over all things info security, hacking, Python programming, and play capture the flags. And on today's video, we're going over Advent of Cyber 2022 from TryHackMe. For any other details like timestamps, playlists, or helpful links, you'll find them in the description below. Okay, let's get into it. So I'm on tryhackme.com, I've logged in and I'm up to task 14, and there's definitely no other tasks available, and I'm currently up to date. So as per usual, there is a fantastic walkthrough. I actually started this one. I realized I haven't been watching the walkthrough, so shame on me. So we have a quick note here, basically saying that this is a bit more of a challenging room. So the focus of this room is going to be Metasploit, Meterpreter, network pivoting, and post exploitation. So let's quickly go over the concepts together. The first one is, what is Docker? So it's a containerization system. So it's a way of packaging applications together and anything else that the application needs to run, which is known as a dependency. And then it's all packaged up like an image. You might have used images in like virtual machines and virtualization software, hypervisors like VirtualBox and that sort of thing. This is more application based. So you can have like an instance of just WordPress and everything that WordPress needs to run. So it's great for developers running it locally or remotely on an actual live production server. So in our case for this room, we have a web application and a database that are running in Docker containers, but we only have the web app available to us via an exposed port. So maybe port 80, maybe port 443, we'll see. So we have a hint here about a common way to tell if an application is in a Docker container, and you can see if there's a Docker env file in the root directory of the file system. So that's a good one to remember. Next up, what is Metasploit? So a powerful penetration testing tool for gaining initial access to a system, performing post-exploitation and pivoting to other applications and systems. So it's free, it's open source, and you might have used it in other TryHackMe rooms. And it's currently owned by the US-based cybersecurity firm Rapid7. So next up, what is a Metasploit session? So after you actually gain a foothold into a system with Metasploit or a Metasploit module, so there's all different types of modules within Metasploit, a session is often opened by default. So these sessions are often called command shells or Meterpreter sessions. And that's going to give us further ways to either compromise, pivot, or find more information out in the server or in the system. So you can even open up other session types in Metasploit such as SSH or WinRM, which don't require payloads. So we can see some Metasploit console commands. So we've got like view sessions. We just run the sessions command, and we can use upgrading the last open session to Meterpreters -u-1, interact with the session. We can have different sessions, sort of like processes. You can have different session IDs, and you can even like a background process. You can just run background to close that session and like minimize the session and then do something else in Meterpreter in Metasploit. So next up, what is Meterpreter? So it's an advanced payload that provides interactive access to a compromised system. So rather than just having like a janky shell where like you don't really have that much interactivity, this will actually give us like something nice to use. And it supports running commands on a remote system, including uploading, download files, and pivoting, which is going to be important to this room. So there's multiple useful commands. So we've got syst info, getting information about the remote system, like the operating system, just a simple upload and then a file. So maybe there's another payload that we want, maybe there's like a backdoor that we want to leave, or maybe you just want to leave a text file to show that you've got access. You can see the interfaces by just running like ipconfig like you would do if you had like a normal shell on the system. This one, resolve a set of host names or target on the target to IP addresses, useful for pivoting. Does that mean like setting aside some IP addresses or finding other IP addresses? Yeah, so find a set of host names on the IP. Yeah, okay, so it's like getting more of a landscape of the network, seeing what else is around. So normal command shells don't support these complex operations such as pivoting. That's why we use Metasploit and Meterpreter. So next up is, what is pivoting? So once an attacker, which will be us in this case, gains initial entry to a system, the compromised machine can be used to send additional web traffic through, allowing previously inaccessible machines to be reached. So I think this is a bit of foreshadowing for us. So we get through on a web application running in a Docker container through an exposed port on a Windows machine. This system will become the attack launch pad for other systems in the network. So we can route network traffic through this compromised machine to run network scans such as Nmap or ARP to find additional machines and services which are previously inaccessible to the pen tester. So this concept is called network pivoting. And we can see this nice, easy to understand diagram where us, the pen tester, the attacker, gaining access to one machine, and then we can start to see from that machine other machines that it's connected to. So we've got containers, so more Docker containers that might be running inside this actual machine. So I think this is a little bit of a roadmap of like what we're going to be doing. Okay, next section, launching the TryHackMe Kali Linux. So we're going to be needing to use a Kali machine. So if you've got one already installed, set up, great. Otherwise, you can use the attack box from TryHackMe. I've got a local machine, so I'm going to set that up. Cool, so make sure you're on the OpenVPN. You can ping 10.10.10.10, and we've got a successful connection, great. We scroll to the top of day 9, forgot where my camera was, and we'll boot that up and give that a minute. Great. So once we've got our virtual machine set up running Kali, we're good to go. So we're up to the section using Metasploit. So we can start by typing in MSF console. That's going to boot up Metasploit. And I got this, you didn't use the magic word. So it looks like a permission error. So I'm going to run quit. And I'm going to run that again, but running sudo. So we have full root admin privileges. And just so you know that these are just welcome messages. So like changes every time. So if you run it again this time, I get a nice duck. But if that's not your thing, you can just run -q and that'll start it up in quiet mode so you don't get any message or anything. So we've got a few examples. So let's just follow this. So we can use the search command. So next we've got to select one of these commands or one of these exploits. You can just use and type in the name, or you can use the number associated with it. So when I've searched it in the list, it's coming up as number 1. So I can just go use 1. And you can confirm that it's definitely selected that right one by looking at the name. So once we've selected it, we can then run info and we can see exactly what is going on with this one. So now we've selected our module, we can continue with seeing these options. But then once we want to, we can actually set or configure the settings to make this module actually work for our case. So in my case, I'm going to set our host, which is like the IP, the host of the machine that we want to look at. I can paste my IP in there. And we can set verbose to true, meaning I want to see the output of what's going on. And next in the example, we've got set the payload listening address. So this is the IP of our machine that's running Metasploit. So I'm just going to go Control-Shift-T, and I'm going to run ifconfig, and I'm going to get the IP address of my machine. And in this case for TryHackMe, it's the TUN0. So the address that we're tunneling through with on TryHackMe's network. So set listening host, and we can pop that IP in there. If you want to, you can see your options again. And now we can see the different, our host has changed, our listening host has changed to us, and there's already a default port that's set for us. Once you're happy with it, then we can hit run. I'm just gonna follow it. Like I'm assuming that this is gonna be what we have to do. So I'm gonna hit run. Like I haven't even nmapped the machine. I'm just going off our directions. So since we set that verbose mode to true, I can already get some information about what our system's actually doing, what about Metasploit is going on. So command shell session 1 opened. So it looks like we've already got a foothold into this system. I've got access already. I've run who am I, and I can see www-data, and that's a web application. So if I can list out the root directory, and remember what we learned earlier on, if there is a .docker environment. So if we list out and include all of our hidden files, I can see in the root directory there is a .docker environment. So this is definitely a Docker container. So we're definitely in the right place. So next section is using Meterpreter to pivot. So Metasploit has an internal routing table that can be modified with the route command. This routing table determines where to send traffic, for instance, through a Meterpreter session. This way, we're using Meterpreter to pivot, sending traffic through to other machines on the network. So this is what we were talking about earlier with this diagram. So we're at this stage, we're at the compromised container stage, and we know that it's a compromised container. So yeah, we want to start looking around. So note that Meterpreter has a separate route command, which is not the same as the top level Metasploit prompts route command described below. If you're currently interacting with a Meterpreter session, you must first background it. Okay, that's pretty confusing. Metasploit is the framework encompassing everything. Meterpreter is one module inside. Let's go with that. So we have an example usage here: route, add or remove, subnet netmask, COM or SID. Configure the routing table to send packets destined for 172.17.0.1 to the latest open session. So route add anything in here to the latest session. So this is session 1, right? So if we went background, the background session 1, we could go yes. And then if we just type in sessions, we have our list of sessions. So the next section is SOCKS proxy. A SOCKS proxy is an intermediate server that supports relaying network traffic between two machines. This tool allows you to implement the technique of pivoting. You can run a SOCKS proxy either locally on a pen tester's machine via Metasploit or directly on a compromised server. In Metasploit, this can be achieved with the auxiliary server SOCKS_proxy module. All right, I'm actually just gonna leave this. So next section is the challenge walkthrough. After deploying the attached VM, let's run nmap against it. So we have our example here. So skipping host discovery, we're trying to see everything on the machine and we have a timing to try and speed it up. Let's go ahead and use their exact command. If you want to make a copy of it, we could output that to a normal file and call that like an nmap file, like we do that, but we'll just use the results because it should be a pretty straightforward scan. Great, so that took 35 seconds and we've got our port 80 open, which means it's accepting web traffic, and that's nothing new. We sort of expected that. So let's go over to http:// and paste in our IP. Looks like because I've got dark mode, we've got dark mode, so I can't really see the icon. So it looks a little bit different to what we've got here in the screenshot. So we've got, after loading up our port on port 80, which is the default port, so we can go to the network tab of our developer tools. We hit Control R to reload. It says we can see that the server responds with an HTTP set cookie header. Am I blind? So if we actually select the 200 request, there we can see our set cookie and we have a token in there. Oh, there's two. So it looks like, according to the screenshot, it's the second one. So the application may be vulnerable to a remote code execution exploit, which impacts Laravel applications using debug mode in 8.4.2. So we can use Metasploit to verify the application is vulnerable to this exploit. Let's go back to our system and boot up MSF console. Make sure we have sudo for the privileges. So like before, if we search, so this is the one that we just used in the example, so that's cool. So we'll do this again, even though I know what's going to happen. We'll just go to use one, or you can use the entire name. But this time we're going to run check, but we actually need to run the whole command, so check. That's cool, I didn't know we could do this. So we go check our hosts, paste in the IP, and then go capital HTTP, capital C, client timeout equals 20. So I don't know what that is. Target appears to be vulnerable. So that's cool. So we've just told it, hey, check this system, and we get back. I'm not sure what the client timeout is. After 20 milliseconds, end it there. So to find out what IP address needs to be used, you can open up a new terminal and type in IP. Okay, so we've already got our IP, so we don't need to worry about that. Let's run the module. Okay, so this time, rather than using set, we're just going to, again, use one command. So run our host equals the IP address. Listening host is our IP address, which we can go just copy and paste from ifconfig rather. So lhost equals our IP. We're the attacker, so it's ours. And then again, we'll set this HTTP client timeout. So again, not sure why we have to set that, but we will. Cool. Okay, so we have access again. So we can run who am I, just like the example. So we'll go background. Are you sure you want a background? Yes. To upgrade to the most recently opened sessions Meterpreter, session to Meterpreter, use the sessions-u-1 command. And then I gotta go sessions-i- to get back into it. So sessions-u-1, and then at that point we go sessions-i-1. So okay, so we're in Meterpreter, meaning we don't just have the basic shell, which is like what I'm used to. So I'm not used to Meterpreter. But we can use some normal commands like cat. So we can cat out in the variable in the www.environment environment, we can see what's inside this file. Use Meterpreter to resolve the remote host name, so the app name, and then we've got the database connection or the database host, web service _database. Okay. So now if I go resolve and I'm looking for this host, I can find the IP address of that particular host. Okay, it's all okay. Okay, so as this is an internal IP address, it won't be possible to send traffic to it directly. We can instead leverage the network pivoting support within MSF console to reach the inaccessible host. To configure the global routing table in MSF console, ensure you have background the command with the Meterpreter session. So I'm gonna copy that and we can go background. So we go back up and then we go route add in the IP address, but we add it to the session 1 that we already have. Route added. We can also see, due to the presence of the Docker environment file, which I did check earlier, that we are in a Docker container. By default, Docker chooses a hard-coded IP to represent the host machine. We'll also need to add that to our routing table for later. Isn't that what I just did? Route add. Oh, I didn't do the dash though too. How do we know that it's, oh, okay. So I just put in that IP address with 32. So that already exists. But we could also just add 011. There's no 01 in an IP address. So it's a Docker thing. Not really sure on that one. So we can print the routing table to verify the configuration settings. So we go route print, and we can see here we've got our included net mask, we've got that IP. Interesting, there are currently no IPv6 routes defined. But with the previously discovered database credentials and the routing table configured, we can start to run Metasploit modules that target Postgres, so the database. Starting with the schema dump, followed by running queries to select information out of the database. This is nuts. Okay, so I'm gonna use the search function again for Postgres, and we're looking for _dump schema. So I can see it here in place number 16. So I'm just gonna go use 16. And I can confirm that we've got Postgres _. You can see here we've got run Postgres :whack Postgres Postgres. So this is all the username, password. All right, let's give this a go. So this might have been what was also in that configuration file that we catted out. Like we've got at our IP address, like we would be logging into SSH. Does that mean username and password at this host? All right, let's found database Postgres, blah, 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 ignoring template 1 and 0. Okay, cool, that worked. Select the information from the specific table. So now we're gonna use Postgres. I'm just gonna copy paste this. Don't judge me. So use auxiliary admin Postgres _SQL. So we've switched modules now, and now we're going to be running that against this IP. We're going to be SQL equals select from users. So we can see under here, we've got users ID, and then we've got our users table. So it's saying select all of this information. So copy paste that over, run that. And now I can see center password. Okay. So to further pivot through the private network, we can create a SOCKS proxy within Metasploit. So I'm definitely just gonna copy paste this off to the side. So I've got a record of it. I'm gonna search SOCKS proxies. We're gonna use 0, and we're gonna run srv host equal to 127.0.0.1, loopback address ourselves, and the server port, I assume this is just a random port of 9050, and then for some reason when you specify the version, is equal to 4A. Auxiliary module running as background job 1, starting the SOCKS proxy server. This will expose a port on the attacker machine, hence our address, that can be used to run other network tools through, such as curl and proxy chains. This is a complicated room, far out. So from the attacker's host machine, we can use curl with the internal Docker IP to show that the web application is running and the SOCKS proxy works. So we can run curl -- proxy SOCKS 4A, and then looking at the local host from that 9050 port that we opened, and then we're looking at this IP. So I'm assuming that this is then going to be the actual machine that these containers are running on. If we type that out, so we had a error. Do I need to wait from the attacker's host machine? Oh, like we just go in a new shell. I know that gave us the same thing. Okay, so TryHackMe is just stopped working. I don't know if the systems are down or what, but I'm gonna put a pin in it and pick it up. Okay, welcome back. No time has passed for you, but it's been a while for me. Everything's back up and running. I'm back to this point that I was before. So I'm just testing whether or not I get a successful curl once we have started our proxy, our SOX proxy server. Still no luck. Okay, so I've just continued with the example here running an nmap scan through proxy chains, and it has worked. So I'm a little confused why we had this can't complete SOX4 connection, but it looks like we are talking directly to the database now through that SOX proxy server that we set up. So super complicated. I'm not really fully comprehending it all, but hey, we're getting through this. So we've got our host scanned. We can see that port 22 is open, which is SSH. It's also possible that Santa reused his password that we saw earlier from that database. So let's go ahead and try what they're using. So it does actually say that we can go back and use an SSH login. So instead of using it directly in our system, which is how I would do it, we're using Meterpreter, Metasploit. So we're going to search for SSH login, and we've got use 0. So we've got the right one selected. This time we're going to go run SSH :whack whack, and our Santa username was just Santa, and the password was almost password, just with some $signs and some numbers. And then we're going to be going at actual machine that's running our Docker containers. Auxiliary mode execution complete. So we were running the scanner. Okay, so I'm just running into the same wall. So to help my sanity, let's go through the questions and let's see if anything comes out through here. So question number 1, deploy the attached VM and wait a few minutes. What port's open? So if we remember, we had port 22. No, that was the shell. We had port 80 from the original Docker container. Cool. Next, what framework is the web application developed with? So that was Laravel. So what CVE, or common vulnerabilities and exposures, is the application vulnerable to? So we searched Laravel. It was this debug RCE. So if we give that a Google, let's go over to exploit DB. Maybe if we select it and we go info, ignition before 2.42. There we go. CVE 2021. Without the CVE. Oh, there we go. All right. TryHackMe is just playing up for me today. Maybe their servers are a bit overwhelmed at the moment. Next up, what command can be used to upgrade the last open session to a Meterpreter session? That was sessions-i-1. -u. Okay, -u opens the last Meterpreter session. Which file indicates a session has been opened with a Docker container? So we learned that was the Docker env or environment. Next up, what file often contains useful credentials for web applications? So this was the .env file that we saw in bar-www. So what database table contains useful information? Postgres? Egress? What database? In this case, it was users, because it's asking what database table. Yeah, the users was not what the database is actually in, but the database table. So Santa's password. So we saw that, and we can paste that in. So hopefully that's correct, because that's what I've been using. Okay, that's good. What ports are open on the host machine? So we saw 22. That was from this scan. So this is the new one that we're looking at, 2280. I mean, we have 4 open. Do we want 22 and then 5432? So this is the host machine. So this is what we're talking about. So I see 22. Oh wait, I had a space. Yeah, cool. 2280. Ports in order. And what's the root flag? Cool. So this is our last one. This is what's doing my head in at the moment. Welcome back. Some time has passed. I have had a restful evening, awakened to the desire to solve this mystery. And in fact, I did on my laptop. I know what I did wrong, so let me please walk you through it so I can finish this video. So here where we found the web service database and we added this to our session. Oh, I just need to upgrade. All right, now I can add it. And then there was this default Docker hard-coded IP. So that was the missing key. I didn't actually have that in the routing table. Also, I changed it to version 5. Apparently it doesn't really matter. But I also changed the port to 1080. I need to make sure that we use the actual right. So switching over to the SOX and then changing it to version 5 and 1080. So just because that's default server port was 1080. So now if we go over and copy in our curl command, but change our port, and also change our version, we actually get a successful connection, unlike every single other time that I've tried this. So that means the last thing was to search for our login. We're going to use 0, and then we're going to just run SSH /whack, and the username was Santa, and that was going to password at, and that default password. That's what I was missing. So simple, and it took me so long to I had to step away. And hey, sometimes that's just what we gotta do. We just look at something so much that we just miss some obvious stuff. I wish it wasn't like that. I wish we could just like mentally reset. So if we look at our sessions now, we have one SSH session that we've just opened. So we can go sessions-I and switch over to 3. Moving around who am I, we're root, and we can look in the current file and we can cut out root.txt, and that's going to give us our flag for the last question. So yeah, that's it. Oh man, this room nearly got the better of me just because I missed something small. I really felt like I knew what I was doing, and then I just didn't. So hey, that's learning cybersecurity. That's learning this stuff. It's just what it's like. It takes time. So thank you very much for watching until this part of the video. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate your support. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe, ding the bell if you like, and leave a comment on how you're going through TryHackMe's current event. Well, all that being said, I'm gonna let YouTube leave a video here for you, so go and check that out, plus a playlist to the other videos in this series. So thank you again, and I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.